Hello from the Beniverse. My name is Ben Friedman, and today I am talking the Fast and Furious franchise in honor of the newest installment, Fast X. And I decided let's rank them. There's 11 films. That gives me a lot of opportunity to talk about the Fast and the Furious franchise. And I'm not going to go into any great detail for any of these movies. And so today, let's start with number 11, which again, I'm not going to spend too much time on each movie. I just want to briefly get on them. So let's start with my least favorite entry. Coming in at number 11, I am doing the Fast and the Furious Tokyo Drift, the third installment within this franchise, directed by Justin Lin. This is his first film in this franchise. The reason I do not like this movie, I'm giving it 1 star out of 5 stars, is because of Lucas Black. I think he's a horrendous actor, not even like bad as some of the other actors on this list are going to be. I just think Lucas Black is such a bad screen presence. His accent is horrible. This movie just doesn't work for me. It's so disattached from the Dominic Toretto world of it all, which I do like. And so when you take that away, when you put it in Tokyo, this movie just doesn't do much for me. The addition of Han, played by Song Kang, is very good. And he's a staple franchise he's a staple character, I should say, in the franchise. But overall, I find the action to be a little lackluster. The soundtrack is quite good. Credit to this movie. It does have a good soundtrack. But this is just a movie that I have no interest revisiting ever. I've seen it once, and to be honest, that's more than enough for me. Coming in, and I think you'll start noticing a trend, coming in at number 10, my second least favorite film within the Fast and Furious franchise is, coincidentally, Too Fast, Too Furious, directed by John Singleton. This film stars Paul Walker and Tyrese Gibson and Eva Mendes. Eva Mendes, who reprises her role in, I believe it's Fast 5. This is, again, I like this movie enough when I saw it. I haven't had any interest in rewatching it. And then I did actually recatch it a few years ago, and I just think it's so boring. I do like Paul Walker in this role. I think Ludacris and Tyrese Gibson are good introductions for it. I don't mind this movie as much as I mind Tokyo Drift, but it's still just a lackluster entry for me that I just have no interest in ever revisiting. That's why it gets 1.5 out of 5 stars from me. Coming in at number 10, another Justin Lin installment. It's actually a very recent installment. It's F9. F9, which stars Vin Diesel, Michelle Rodriguez. This movie features John Cena as the villain, and it's one of my biggest issues with this movie. I think the movies work successfully when everybody but Vin Diesel is aware of the joke of the movie they're in. And in this film, F9, I just find John Cena to be way too self-serious in it. I just don't like this character that is supposed to be Dominic Toretto's brother. It's just a boring film for me. The action, it feels very stale. I've seen it before. The spectacle is a little too wild for me, them going to space. It all just felt so self-parody. And yet at the center, you have this just way too dramatic performances from Vin Diesel and John Cena. I think John Cena, as he comes in Fast X, is actually able to fix the tone significantly. But that's why Fast 9 doesn't do anything for me. I'm giving it 1.5 stars. Now we're getting into the Fast and Furious films that I actually have a lot of positive things to say about, even if I'm not giving them the highest critical scores. And that is really centered around the Fate of the Furious, which is the 8th installment. This is coming in at number 9 on my list. And the Fate and the Furious, Charlize Theron suffers the same issue that I think John Cena does. Now, she's a little bit more jovial, I guess, in her performance as the villain. She has a little bit more fun, but the issue is when there's a scene of the character of Dominic Toretto, played by Vin Diesel, watching his kid, have a gun pointed at his head. I just think the movie gets way too dark and way too self-serious. This is directed by the director who, oh my gosh, why am I blanking on his name? F. Gary Gray, who directed Straight Outta Compton. And there are elements of this movie that I like. I think that Jason Statham and The Rock Perrin actually do very well. I think their humor is balanced really well. It does suffer this issue that I will talk about a little bit later, where Vin Diesel is too self-isolated in this film. He's away from the family. The interest is thus less. But I do think The Rock and Jason Statham do get a lot of scenes together that work. I think the comedy in that sense are good, and I think there is some spectacle fun to be had. I do think F. Gary Gray misses the mark in some of the action. I just find some of this action not even bad, just very bland. I don't remember it. So that's why the Fate of the Furious is coming in. I gave it 2.5 stars, and that's why it is coming in at number 8. So number 8 for Fate. Coming in at number 7, I have a movie that I've actually admittedly only seen once. I just remember liking it. It's Fast and Furious from 2009. This is the first installment to then again feature Vin Diesel in a lead role after the first film. And I'm having trouble speaking on this film because I've only seen it once. I saw it a few years ago, maybe actually now, close to a decade ago. But I like this film. I like the direction. I think this is where Justin Lin really shines. I think you start getting a little bit more of this transitional period into Fast 5, where the action becomes full on, almost spy global thriller, but it still keeps that race car spirit in it. It's this kind of nice hybrid between the two. So I like what Justin Lin accomplishes in this movie, and I think it is the sign of more to come. That's why Fast and Furious, I'm ultimately giving it 2.5 stars, but I like this movie a fair amount. But like I said, it is the testament of something that is going to come and be better in the future. I'm going to do a mulligan live on camera. Coming in at number 6 is the newest installment within the franchise, Fast X. And I'm not going to go into any great detail about that. If you want to hear my thoughts on Fast X, please check out my review, which I have linked below. That's where I get into real details. But I will just say, I think Jason Momoa captures the villain energy perfectly in this movie, and this movie suffers the issues of Vin Diesel being, again, isolated too much from the cast. But I think the performances are largely better, especially with Jason Momoa really being able to anchor the charisma, and John Cena coming in there having a lot more fun in this role. It's the first of more to come, and this was the one that felt the closest to the earlier Justin Lin franchises installments rather than F8 and F9, which I've already stated, not my biggest fan of. So that's why Fast X right now is coming in at number 6 on this list. Coming in at number 5, I had to do this. It's the one that started it all. The Fast and the Furious 2001. Obviously, this really introduces the world to Vin Diesel and Paul Walker. This also stars Michelle Rodriguez, who that means she's been a staple of this franchise now for, gosh, how many years is that? It's like 22 years. That's crazy. Also features performances from Ja Rule and who else is in this cast? Oh, of course, Jordana Brewster. This film, I give it the credit of, and I'm going to say I gave it 3 stars. It's, again, not my favorite one. It's definitely not the one I rewatch, but it's kickstarted something, and there's something special about it. And there's something so inherently serious yet cheesy about these films. The action is really good, as directed by Rob Cohen. There's just something easily endearing about these characters. Yes, is it a straight-up ripoff of the film Point Break? Yes, it is, but I enjoy this film, and I think there is a lot of fun to be had here. That's why it's coming in at number 5. It's paying respect to the classics, as well as this movie really just did make stars out of all these characters. Coming in at number 4, some people might be surprised at how high I have it on my list. I actually like this movie quite a bit. I think it's really funny. I think the cast is all having a blast. And I think the direction and action is handled better than I think some people give it credit to. It's Fast and Furious presents Hobbs and Shaw. What works for me is the buddy cop element of this installment. I think Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and Jason Staham are actually quite funny together. I like Vanessa Kirby being thrown in the role along with Helen Mirren. Everything about this movie works for me. I think Idris Elba is having the time of his life as a villain. Is this a particularly coherent movie? I wouldn't say so. It does really go crazy off the rails. But as a buddy comedy within the Fast and Furious franchise, I have a ton of fun with this movie. I think it's pretty endlessly rewatchable. And I think it's just a perfect use of Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson's comedic sensibilities paired well with Jason Statham's completely straight man approach to comedy. It just works for me, so that's why it's coming in at number 4. Coming in at number 3 is, and I should just mention, this one is where we get to the 3.5 stars because I'm giving this installment 3.5 out of 5 stars. Directed by James Wan, he actually maybe has the most difficult role of any of the directors in the Fast and Furious franchise, and that's because he has to deal with the tragic death of Paul Walker. And whatever you will say about this film, the final 10 minutes of this film are absolutely beautiful. And that is Furious 7. Jason Statham as the villain in this movie really works. The spectacle's really fun. I just find this movie to be really great. Everything of all this cast working together, I think The Rock being sidelined is the only real element of this movie that I'm not like the biggest fan of. But I think the action, the way they handle the Paul Walker tragedy just really works for me in this film. And I find it an actually quite endearing film. And the little bit sadder tone that I've already kind of discredited other installments, it works for me because they have to deal with this Paul Walker tragedy. I like this film. I think it's a really touching film. And like I said, those last 10 minutes will get anybody to cry. Coming in at number 2, this will shock people. Directed by Justin Lin. The reason I am putting this one here is not because it's not probably the best installment in this franchise. Universally, everyone would probably agree this is the best movie within the franchise. It just so happens that this movie didn't hit me at the right point in my life, and it's not my first exposure to this movie, to these characters and movies. And it is Fast 5, directed by Justin Lin. Now, this film does so much right. The introduction of The Rock, who just changes the tempo of this franchise. I think the franchise is so much better and more complete with the character of The Rock. The insane action spy espionage thriller of it, the bank heist through Rio de Janeiro. All of this works really expertly. Justin Lin directs the heck out of this movie. This is a really good action movie overall. This just feels like a Jerry Bruckheimer, Michael Bay film in all the best ways possible. I think this is where the humor of the Fast and Furious franchise really gets its tone. Just everything about this movie works. The kind of trashy Ocean's 11 vibe of it. I have a lot of fun with this movie. I'm giving it 4 out of 5 stars. And then finally, this was a tough one for me, but it is just the case of this is the movie I've watched the most in the franchise because this was my first introduction to the franchise. And it's Fast and Furious 6, again, directed by Justin Lin. Reason I like this movie is, I don't know what it is. It's just, this was the movie that captured me when I watched it for the first time. The over-the-top action, the jokes. I think Ludacris is really funny in this movie. I think Luke Evans is a solid enough villain. The Gina Carano action set piece, the Gal Gadot being in here with Song Kang, all of this really works for me. I just have a lot of fond memories watching this movie. It has some really great music. The airport action scene at the end, some of the heist scenes with the cars. This, like I said, for me, this was just my first introduction, and I really liked it. And that's why I have it. It's probably a little bit nostalgia. I will admit Fast 5 is probably better, but for me, Fast and Furious 6 is the one that I've watched the most, and that's why it's at the best. But thank you all for watching the Beniverse Movie Channel. My name is Ben Friedman. If you like this video, make sure to like, hit that bell below, and let me know your rankings. How do you rank the 11 installments within the Fast and Furious franchise? And where do you rank Fast X now that you'll be seeing it this weekend? Let me know all of those thoughts down below in the comments. Anyway, all, thank you so much for watching. Take care, and bye-bye.